It's just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Kevin Burniston, all the way from Wisconsin. He helps dental professionals across the United States create a better quality of life for themselves and their families. For over a decade, he has studied the business of dentistry and worked to develop innovative and effective strategies to overcome common pitfalls. His training methods have empowered thousands of dentists to reach and exceed their goals. Kevin's current curriculum has a heavy emphasis on insurance participation and exposing industry-wide misconceptions surrounding reimbursement. He coaches patient-facing education techniques to increase treatment plan acceptance, boost productivity, and enhance overall patient health. Kevin, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, I want to start with my practice is 30 years old here in Phoenix, and a lot of these kids are coming out of school and they're saying, hey, old man, you graduated in the glory days, the golden years 30 years ago, and dentistry is different now. The kids got $350,000 of student loans. There's corporate dentistry. Do you think the glory days, the golden years were back in the 80s and 90s? Or, what would you say if your own daughter walked out of college and said, Dad, I think I'm going to go to dental school? Would you say that's a good idea? Or would you say, if you're going to do that, you should have done that, 20 years ago?
Well, see, it's funny. I have 3 daughters, actually. I have 3 little girls, no boys, all girls.
How old are they?
And the 9-year-old, a 6-year-old, and an 18-month-old. So
God, you're a busy man. Well, I had 4, so it's time you fire up the oven again, and you got to make a 4th girl. Come on, if I did 4, you got to do it too.
Wow, you really have 4 girls?
No, I have 4 boys. They're 22, 24, 26, and 28. But my oldest boy made me a granddaughter, so now I got a girl. But
wow.
Little Taylor's
Are any
5.
of them dentists? Did
No.
any of them choose dentistry?
No, they didn't do it. And my dad really was upset with me that I didn't follow him into Sonic Drive-In. He had 9 Sonic Drive-Ins, and he was telling me, dude, by the time you go to 4 years at Creighton University and 4 years at UMKC Dental School, you could have 5 Sonic Drive-Ins and be a millionaire. And I'm like, I know, Dad, but I just don't want to make hamburgers my whole life. Love you to death, but I don't want to spend my whole life making French fries. And my next door neighbor, Kenny Anderson, was a dentist. Big shout out to Kenny Anderson. Just celebrated his 50th anniversary at his dental office, still practicing Monday through Thursday. Yeah. And, I go to work with my dad, loved Sonic, but I go to work with Kenny and he'd do root canals and take x-rays. And I just thought what he was doing was just unbelievable. I decided in the 6th grade I was going to go to dental school, and I've never deviated from that ever since. But what would you say to your 3 daughters if they say, Dad, do you think I should be a dentist?
I would love for my daughters to be dentists. In fact, if they're interested in any way, I'd love to help them, through the process. And I'm sure similar to you, I've been fortunate to be connected with a lot of people that understand the business of dentistry really well, and I think could help them. I definitely think there's challenges today that may not have been there, 20 years ago, but if they understand those challenges and have a plan, I think somebody could be very successful today. In fact, a lot of people are.
Well, you talk a lot about dental insurance, and that's why I called you to be on the show. You didn't call me. Dental insurance is very interesting because, I lectured in 6 continents, regularly, and they only have dental insurance in about 20 countries. They don't even have dental insurance in China, India, Indonesia, Brazil. And when you explain dental insurance, especially in China, the Chinese dentists, they don't even think it's right. They're like, well, if you drink Coca-Cola and eat Hershey's chocolate bars and don't brush and floss your teeth, why should your employer or your government fix your cavity? They almost say it's a perverse incentive that when someone you drink Mountain Dew all day and you never floss, and then when you get 9 cavities, why should the CEO of Ford and Chrysler have to pay for your dental decay? So dental insurance is something that the majority of countries don't have, but in America, a lot of people believe that it drives everything. What is your views on dental insurance?
So, well, first, I just want to make sure it's clear that obviously I represent Henry Schein, and Henry Schein has taken this initiative to better understand what dentists are going through and in practice care, basically that to help dentists focus on their patients. If we can help them with their practice, then dentists can focus more on their patients. And insurance over the last 5 years, well, probably since 2008, 2009, insurance has just taken over for one of the either the top concern or in the top two or three concerns of basically almost all dentists. That we ask our sales reps to ask our dentists and have these meetings with them about what's working well, what struggles they have, and virtually every time insurance comes up. And so to your point, how do dentists navigate that, and how do they explain it to patients? I can give you one quick example. When a patient, in a lot of procedures today, when a doctor does a treatment plan, asks the patient, or explains to the patient, here's the work you need to get done, explains everything really well, shows them what needs to be done. In many cases, the patient says right afterwards, well, does my insurance cover that? Right? And that's one of the first questions the patient asks. And depending on how the dentist responds to that, it could change whether or not that patient accepts that treatment or feels they need to. And it's not always the dentist. It could be the dentist leaves the room and the assistant that's walking the patient to the front, the patient asks the assistant, does my insurance cover that? And depending on her response, or the person at the front desk, depending on all their responses, that patient may or may not accept that treatment. And so one thing at Henry Schein we try to explain, in that scenario, is what's the patient really asking? When a patient says, does my insurance cover that? Their concern isn't whether or not the insurance covers it. One, they want to know, is this procedure necessary and is it expensive? Right? I mean, that's really what they're asking. If we tell a patient they need periodontal disease treatment, that they need to go into a perio program, and that patient says, does my insurance cover this? Really what they're asking is, do I need it? Is this necessary? And is it going to cost me a lot? And if our response is, let's verify your benefits, we need to make a phone call, we need to verify that, or we need to check. What that patient just heard is that we're not sure if it's important and it might cost a lot. And so we can talk about a few things with insurance, but one is just helping a patient understand that we shouldn't base our healthcare decisions whether or not our employer is willing to pay for that procedure. And I don't know if I'm answering your question completely, but one thing with insurance, dealing with insurance, is how we explain it to patients is going to help patients accept more treatment.
Well, I think you're nailing it, because I mean the ugly inconvenient fact that a dentist doesn't ever want to hear about is that I'm just talking about diagnosed cavities. I'm not talking about fancy bleaching, bonding veneers, but basically in the United States of America, when you diagnose 100 cavities, only 38 get drilled, filled, and billed. That's a 1/3 treatment plan acceptance rate.
Right.
Having watched this game for 30 years, having podcast interviewed every dental consultant I can find, and thank you for coming on the show, I wanted to get you on, is that, that inside the same medical dental building in the same zip code, so the same small town, the same economy, all the same macroeconomic factors, it seems like 1 out of 3 humans will never get treatment done. 1 out of 3 is average, but there are these offices who get 2 out of 3 to convert to treatment plan acceptance. And so if the average office does $750K and that's 175, if you had double that, that's 750 twice, $1.5 million, and 175 twice is that goes to 350. And it's not that you just make a lot more money. I mean, if you were a fireman, would you want to put out 1 out of 3 fires in your town, or would you want to put out 2 out of 3?
Right.
And I always tell the dentists that they're misguided when they spend so much time focusing on how to fill the filling, like what bonding agent, what material, is it going to be 3MSP? Is it going to be, Ivoclar? Is it going to be Serona? That's not the question. The question is 2 out of 3 people just left your office and didn't get any of the microorganisms removed. I mean, so I think treatment plan presentation is more important than how do you restore a filling.
I don't know that it's more important, or or maybe say it's equally as important, because if a patient doesn't accept the treatment, then it's not getting done, and we're just in a bad spot if we didn't identify
Let
in the
me
first
ask you.
place.
You got 3 daughters, and that's what
Yeah.
I'm talking about. So your 9-year-old goes to me, and I convince her to remove the infection and get a filling. Your 6-year-old daughter and your 18-month-old come in, and I don't convince them, and they both leave with a cavity. Versus if you sent
Right.
that your 3 girls across the street, and she convinced the 9-year-old and the 6-year-old to do it, not the 18-month-old. I mean, I think the dentist who got 2 of your 3 girls to remove their infection. In fact, I always joke this. I'd say, dentistry would be a lot better off if we got rid of all the restorative materials and removed 100% of all the decay and just packed the teeth with butter. Because I would rather my 5-year-old Taylor have her cavities removed and not filled than have her cavities left in place. Maybe I'm maybe that's crazy, but I'm just. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, I'm just trying to make a point that we need to
Right.
make treatment plan presentation far more serious. And what you're
Right.
saying is that when they say, "Well, does my insurance coverage?" You're talking about what they're really asking is this necessary, and is it going to cost a lot? So, what verbiage? How could you help dentists and treatment plan coordinators and assistants and hygienists and receptionists do a better communication narrative dialogue so that they can convert to? Because I'm convinced, and again, I'm totally convinced 1 out of 3 is never going to get done. I mean, dude, I have
Right.
patients that come in Phoenix and they have oxygen tubes in their nose and they're smoking outside my door.
Right.
I got, everybody's got uncles and cousins that have been told they need to take diabetic medication while they're drinking a 12-pack
Right.
every weekend. I mean, you're not supposed to drink 12 beers if your A1C level is off the charts. So humans are humans. They're crazy.
Right.
A Farran family reunion makes is a pretty close comparison to the local zoo. I mean, we're crazy animals.
Right.
So 1 out of 3
Right.
people. I mean, they bring Mountain Dew into the operatory, and I tell them, I
Right.
say,
Right.
do you take your bong to church? You just come on. Don't bring Mountain Dew into a dental office. I mean, god dang.
Right.
So 1/3 of Americans aren't going to listen to anybody. Their mom, their dad, their preacher, their dentist.
Right.
1/3 are just completely crazy. But what I'm excited about is I see ample evidence that there's a dentist who only gets 1 out of 3 to get treatment, and the dentist right next door to him is getting 2 out of 3. So that's where the football is. That's what everybody should be
Right.
focusing on.
And it could be, it could be a number of reasons. When it comes to insurance, I think patients, because of medical insurance, they look at insurance as an authority in healthcare. So if insurance doesn't cover it, it must not be important. It must not be necessary. And so if we default to what does insurance say, then the patient hears, well, if insurance doesn't cover this, then I must not need it. A dental implant versus a crown or versus a bridge. If insurance doesn't cover it, then it must be elective. It must be above and beyond what's necessary. And in reality, it could be better medicine, and it could be better for the patient. And the reason why the insurance doesn't cover it, it's not because the insurance doesn't cover it, it's because their employer didn't purchase that coverage. So an example I always give is years ago, I was driving down the road and I had a truck up ahead of me. I watched a hammer come out of the bed of the truck, hit the freeway, and it went up in the air. And I was trying to follow it, and I didn't see where it went, and it went right through my windshield, shattered my windshield. And I go home and I call my dad, and I was telling my dad about it, that I just shattered my windshield. And my dad said, well, your number's not covered under insurance. You're going to have to pay for it. And I was like, I think it is covered under my insurance. I looked at my car, looked at my information, and it said covered windshields. And my dad and I get an argument about it, and he says it's not covered. He called his insurance just recently, and it wasn't covered. I call the insurance, and it is covered. And I talked to him about it. It's purely because when he purchased the policy, he chose to save a little bit of money and chose not to cover his windshield. When I called, I'd picked the windshield coverage as part of my coverage, and so it was covered. State Farm or whoever your insurance company is, they're not saying you don't need a windshield to drive your car. It's just the coverage you picked, you chose either covered a windshield or didn't cover a windshield. They're not saying you don't need a windshield. And so dental insurance is similar, that when the employer purchase, and I think it's like not over 90%, and maybe even be closer to 98% of all dental insurance is purchased by an employer. So when that employer purchased that insurance, they're choosing a policy just like we pick car insurance. They're not saying you don't need dental implants. They're just not willing to pay for it as part of their plan. So as a patient, I shouldn't choose my treatment based off what my employer will pay for, which maybe I'm speaking in a perfect world that, if all patients accepted treatment, but helping a patient understand that this treatment is necessary, it's important. However, your employer may not have purchased this coverage. And I think even helping a patient understand some insurance does cover this procedure. It just happens that your employer didn't choose to cover this particular procedure.
Right. So what is the terminology, though? I mean, how do you think she should answer this?
So does my insurance cover this? If that's the question, my response is yes, insurance covers this. And the reason why insurance covers this is because it's important to your health and there's repercussions if you don't get it taken care of. However, your employer may not have purchased this coverage, so we'll have to verify your benefits. But this procedure is very important and critical to your health, and it is covered by insurance. It just may not be covered by your employer. And just helping a patient understand they shouldn't make their healthcare decisions based off their employer. They should make it based off of that relationship between them and their dentist.
True. Those are all good points, and it's really not dental insurance either. I wish people would call it insurance. Insurance is whenever there's an actuarial risk analysis versus moral hazard. I mean, we all have fire insurance on our house, but only 1% make a claim. We all have auto insurance, but only a few of us wreck. In America, for health insurance, only 1% of Americans spend the night in a hospital in any given year if you take out having a baby. And dental insurance is a benefit. I mean, because how could it be insurance when 100% need a cleaning, exam, x-rays, 100% eat sugar, 100% don't floss, 100% don't. I mean, I'm in my life, every single house I've ever been in since I was in dental school, when I use their bathroom, the toothbrush bristles are completely frayed and flared. And I walk out there and I just say, you guys, you might as well just be using mouthwash. I mean, to remove plaque, these bristles have to be perfectly straight. And not only are these not perfectly straight, I mean, it looks like you've been, cleaning your spark plugs of your car with this for 2 years. So it's a benefit. But why do you think some treatment plan presenters have this? I know two different girls. One's in Indianapolis, one's here in Phoenix, where they got a job at a dental office and took them from $750,000 to $1.5 million because they doubled their treatment plan presentation. After 5 or 6 years, they both asked to be paid as much as the hygienist was, since they're bringing in, literally an extra $750,000. Both times the dentist said, no, you're a dental assistant, so they quit. Then they went to a dentist down the street. The dentist they left went back down from $1.5 million to $750,000, and the dentist they're at doubled, and now they've been there forever. And I've tried to get them to create online CE courses, but they're embarrassed and they're shy and all that. But I mean, I've just seen this so many times where I think the most important person in the office is who's presenting the treatment. Sometimes the dentist can do it, but most of the time dentists have a personality of an accountant, an engineer, a scientist, and they don't have that flair, that salesmanship that the best treatment plan coordinators have. And orthodontists know it better than anything. I mean, orthodontists, they know that is the key employee.
So a simple question to ask is, in a dental practice, if a dentist asks anybody on their team, why should a patient come in every 6 months to our practice? Why should they accept whatever the treatment is? Why should a patient accept this? And just listen to the team and hear their responses, because I think it's eye-opening sometimes that when the doctor may articulate it very well, may explain it to the patient very well, but that patient turns to the assistant or the hygienist or the person at the front desk and wants verification of, is this really necessary? And depending on how they explain it, that patient may or may not accept that treatment. And so to your point, having a really good a treatment plan presenter, or just having your team be able to reinforce what you just said, reinforce what the doctor just said of why it's necessary. I'll give you an example. My wife's a nurse. When she was pregnant with my 6-year-old, she goes to the dentist and she gets her teeth cleaned. And when she finishes getting her teeth cleaned, the dentist says, because you're pregnant, I'd like to see you in 3 months. And we can go ahead and schedule that at the front desk. So when she goes to the front desk, the assistant walking her up there says, let's get you scheduled for your 6-month appointment. And my wife says to the assistant, oh, I think the doctor said 3 months. And the assistant said, well, it's precautionary. Your mouth is perfect. There's really nothing wrong in your mouth. And insurance is only going to cover it every 6 months. But it's up to you if you want to come in 3 months or in 6 months. And my wife, being a nurse, looked at the assistant as a nurse and said, well, what do you think? And she said, your 6 month is probably fine. And my wife said, okay, sure. And so she scheduled a 6-month appointment, comes home, and I teach total health to doctors. I teach the importance of all these things. And so I asked my wife, so when are you going back to the dentist? She said, well, that was the funny thing. The doctor said 6 months, but the doctor said 3 months. The assistant said 6 months. So I went with the 6 months. I told my wife the reason why everybody's so worried about drinking and smoking when you're pregnant is you're 2.5 times more likely to deliver a premature low birth weight baby. So don't drink and smoke when you're pregnant. If you have periodontal disease when you're pregnant, you're 7 times more likely to deliver a premature low birth weight baby. So if you think 2.5 times, people don't drink and smoke because they're scared of premature low birth weight. I think it's the number 2 cause of infant death. That periodontal disease is far more. And the dentist, it's really important for her to come in, but the assistant didn't understand that, didn't know that, didn't reinforce it. And so my wife went with every 6 months. So when I called that doctor up, and he's a good friend of mine, we talked through it. I said, it's basically just education. The team has to understand why, so they can reinforce what you're saying. Because if that assistant had just said to my wife, yeah, it's really important you come in 3 months because periodontal disease is linked to heart disease, it's linked to premature low birth weight, it's linked to all these things. We need to see you in 3 months just to make sure everything is okay. My wife would have accepted in a heartbeat. And so I think a really important piece of patient acceptance is just making sure the team understands why and they can reinforce it.
And I've been saying that forever. I mean, you go to any dental conference, 1/3 of the lecture room is entire dental office teams, where every row is the dentist, the hygienist, and everybody. And then the other half of the 2/3 is all these dentists that come alone to save money. And if you went and picked up the stats on the dental offices that bring all their staff, those are the ones that are getting 2 out of 3 people to do treatment. And the ones that come alone are the ones that get 1 out of 3 people to do treatment. I mean, the dentist wants to educate himself, but he doesn't realize that they're asking questions to the receptionist on the phone. They're asking questions to the assistant while she's taking x-rays, the hygienist. I mean, it's just crazy. But yeah, I think the preterm birth deal, that's going to be the first. Money's the answer. What's the question? And these medical insurance, one of the most expensive things they have is a preemie, and the average preemie is $1 million in cash. And they completely see this link to periodontal disease, and they completely want to cover all their pregnant girls getting 3-month cleanings. And that's the first juncture of this oral health continuum. It's not going to be dementia and Alzheimer's and pancreatic cancer and all this stuff like that. It's going to be the preemie. And the other thing is with the silver diamine fluoride. I mean, little kids actually die sometimes when they're taken to and be put under to have a bunch of chrome steel crowns and pulpotomies and all this stuff like that. And there's a lot of dentists who say, no, I want to see your daughter. She's a high decay rate. I want to see her every 3 months because I want to coat her cavities with silver diamine fluoride because I do not want to take her under and put her under general anesthesia. And and then also by seeing the parents every 3 months, you have one more session where you can talk about, you only drink water. My granddaughter, my grandkids spent the night with me Saturday, and Taylor's 5, and she wanted apple juice. So you know what I did? I took 4 glass pots. I set her up on by the stove, and I took 4 glass pots, and I poured in a bottle of water in one, set it down. Then I poured in an apple juice and put that down, and then I took a Coke and a Gatorade, and then I took a glass, and I showed her that. Like the Coke had like 19 grams of sugar, so I showed her a sugar packet is 3.5 grams. So we counted out how many packages of sugar, and I put it in a glass next to it. And then we boiled, turned them all on high, boiled them. The water boiled to 0, but the apple juice, it was just this black tar. And I'm like, Taylor, what is that? And she's like, that's sugar. And I'm like, what causes cavities? Sugar. And I said, now, you don't drink sugar. You can eat sugar, you can eat an apple, but you can't drink it. You can eat an orange, but you can't drink it. And my boys loved it. In fact, we taped it. Ryan taped it because they remember when I did that when they were little. And I just said, you can't drink sugar. So there's another, opportunity to explain to mom, I'm putting silver diamine fluoride on these cavities. You can't give a 2-year-old apple juice because so many of these moms, they're so innocent. They say, well, I'm not giving her Coke. I'm not giving her Mountain Dew. I'm giving her apple juice. I'm giving her orange juice. So they think they're doing the right thing, and they need a coach, the hygienist, the dentist. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. Yeah. Dental insurance is a tough play.
I was just in Wyoming a couple of weeks ago to go back to insurance, and in the state of Wyoming, a major insurance company just made a switch there where they're offering a lower tier of their insurance. And dentists are faced with, do they join the lower tier or they stay in the higher tier? So dentists all over the state are trying to decide if I don't join the lower tier and a dentist down the street joins the lower tier, patients could potentially go to the dentist at the lower tier, and I could lose patients. And so it's this across the state concern or worry of who's going to join, who's going to stay in the higher tier. And as more people join that lower tier, other doctors feel like they're forced to do it. What's scary about that is doctors a lot of times they look at that decrease in payment. So let's say the lower tier is a 15% reduction in fees. So the doctor looks at 15% reduction and thinks, okay, if I take a 15% reduction, it means my income is going to go down 15% for everything I'm getting from that dental insurance company. And so if I'm getting $100,000 from that insurance company, my income's $100,000 from that insurance company, my income is going to drop down to $85,000. But the reality is, it's not the doctor's income that goes down 15%. It's their production from that insurance company. So if my production was $1 million and my income was $300,000, 15% of $300,000 was $45,000. So I may be down $45,000. I got to find ways to make that up. But if my production drops 15%, so I'm getting $1 million from one insurance provider, my reimbursement gets cut 15%. My reimbursement went down $150,000. It didn't go down $45,000. It went down $150,000. And that goes, my overhead stays exactly the same. I have the same supplies, the same team. I have everything's the same. And my income now dropped basically in half. And so what I don't think people are always aware of is when they see the 15% cut, they think that's 15% to the bottom line when it's actually to the top line, and it could have a much bigger impact than they realize. It wasn't so much I want to talk about a specific insurance company or anything like that. It was just to help dentists understand that a cut in reimbursement could have a bigger impact than that 10% or 15%. It could have a bigger impact on their bottom line. And because of that impact, they need to consider opportunities to optimize their practice or to look for inefficiencies in their practice and ways to grow their practice, because that 10% cut may have a bigger impact than they realize. And so it's not so much to talk about a specific insurance company, but just to give an example of across the country, there's these cuts that are happening and the impact could be significant. And so within that practice, we need to look for ways to be more profitable and look for ways to optimize insurance and like you said, and get more patients to accept treatment and understand the consequences of not accepting that treatment. And that was my purpose behind it. Was just
so at year end, in this year there's 225 million Americans, and 300. I'm sorry, there's 325 million Americans, and 211 million, or 66%, have dental insurance, and 92%, or 153 million, get those through their employer. Another 7% buy individual coverage, and another 49 million get dental benefits through programs like Medicaid. And so if 66% of the population has insurance, there's the other focus is what percent, two out of three Americans have dental insurance. 1 out of 3 people have no dental insurance. And I always thought one of the most interesting things about dental insurance is you ask a dentist to spend 5% of their revenue on advertising to get those 1 out of 3 Americans who don't have dental insurance and do Google AdWords, do Facebook AdWords, do direct mail, get a lit monument sign in front of your practice, and they say, "Nah, I don't like doing all that." But then you send them a PPO contract where the fee is 40% less, and they all sign up. Why do they not spend 5% going after 34% of America without dental insurance, but they don't blink at signing up 40% reduction in their fee for a PPO? Explain that one to me.
Well, I think part of it, it's not easy finding the patients.
Hell, it's it's 1/3 of America.
But it's attracting them. With patients with insurance, you basically have a list as a patient. You have a list of doctors in network, and so it's a clear path to market to those patients. That if I have a specific insurance, I look at my list, and it's an easy way to market. I will say, my process, or I shouldn't say my process. Part at Henry Schein, our process for helping a doctor with any of these problems is it's going to be different for every dentist, right? I mean, there's going to be some things that work for everybody, but it depends. And that's, so we have 1,200 sales reps in total. So the 1,200 sales reps go through courses. They're taught the business of dentistry. They're taught about insurance. They're taught about marketing. They're taught about OSHA. They're taught about basically the business side of dentistry. And the reason for that is because every office has different concerns, different needs. It may be similar. I mean, the doctor in Wyoming may have some similar concerns to the doctor in Florida. But just like you may have financial concerns, I may have financial concerns. They may be similar, but I feel like mine are unique to me. And I want to talk to somebody that understands me and my situation, rather than somebody that just says, in general, here's what you just do with your finances. And so for our doctors, what we're asking at Henry Schein, we're asking our reps and doctors to do is sit down and talk through what's working well in your practice. What concerns do you have, and how are those concerns affecting you personally? And so a typical conversation with a doctor could be, what do you enjoy about your practice? Well, I enjoy helping patients. I enjoy cosmetic dentistry. I enjoy all the things about changing smiles and helping people with their health. And concerns, what concerns you about your practice? Insurance, not enough new patients, feel like I'm working harder and making less money. I mean, there's all these things. It could be patient acceptance, but that particular doctor has things they enjoy, things they're concerned about. And then ultimately, those concerns have a personal impact. If insurance reimbursement's down, then that dentist may not be able to take a vacation with their family this year, or may not be able to pay for the college they want for their kids. And so for that office, we want to help them come up with a plan to address those concerns. And in I don't know. And so in generalities, we can say here's some ideas, but each office is going to have nuances that they'd like help with. And at Henry Schein, I mean, I can send you this image. We have this wheel of things that we can do for a doctor. And in the center is practice care. And the wheel has equipment technology, supplies, business solutions. It has technical service and CAD/CAM or digital impressioning. But this whole wheel of services that we have, depending on the doctor's what's going on in their practice, they may need us for different areas of that wheel. And what we want our team to be able to do is understand the business of dentistry and be able to have those conversations with their doctor and navigate, all those things. And so I don't know that there's an answer or, a silver bullet that works for everybody. I think it depends. It depends on each practice.
I'll tell you another thing about that. So everybody has recognized the pattern that implants are in Invisalign. Any procedure, if you don't do it one time a week, you never reach critical mass, which includes technical professions and profitability. If you place one implant every other month, you're losing money. You're just, all the money you put in the training, the CBCT, the implant system, all that stuff, you're not returning investment. So you need to do some, if you're doing sleep apnea, Invisalign, place implants, critical mass is 1 unit per week. And everybody that's placing 1 unit a week, they have a live relationship with that vendor in their backyard. The people that are buying them online have no human contact. And it's because of what you just said. It's because when you have that human contact, your relationship, if you work that value chain and you have problems, it might be something as little like, I know my implant guy, we've gone to bars after work and had drinks with his other top dentist. And then you're sitting there from 7 to 10 watching a ball game talking implants. And just like dentists have no respect for Delta Dental and the dental insurance industry, and they need to break that. They need to call up the Delta CEO, take him to lunch, press the flesh, run for mayor. Hey, if you ever need a sales call with me, you give me a week notice, I'll block off time. I'll go with you to help convince Motorola or Intel or Boeing or whatever the importance of this dental insurance plan. Same thing with the vendors of supplies. I've always traded my reps, amazing, because dentists only see their office. These reps know locally in your region. Like you take a Schein rep, you got 1,200 of them. That guy, how many offices does the average Schein rep call on?
Well, about 120.
Okay, so your office. She knows 120 offices. And that's got to be your best friend. That's what Dentaltown was about. With Dentaltown, no dentist should ever have to practice solo again. Get on there and talk to your homies, download the app, find out what's going on. And that's why on Dentaltown, we let all people who work in dentistry, I want all the manufacturers on there, because if all the dentists are saying, gosh, I love their product, but it's red, I wish it was blue. Well, hell, the manufacturer needs to know that more than anybody on earth, because that's the only guy that can start making it blue instead of red. So, I mean, my reps going back 30 years would actually drive me to other offices and introduce me to older dentists when I was a kid. And I mean, it's your link to the outside world. And I don't believe that reps should just come in and I think you should block off time. I mean, when my supply rep comes on and they come in and talk to Jan, she blocks it off like she was doing a filling or a crown. And,
wow, that's cool.
And you got to treat them like,
Yeah, I would love for more dentists to know this, that their sales rep, they may not, their particular rep may not know insurance like we'd hope they would, but that sales rep will know where to go. And that's a big part of what, the field sales consultant or one of their sales reps from Henry Schein will do is they know within Henry Schein or within the industry where to go for help. And you name it, lease negotiations, insurance, marketing, you name it, being the biggest dental distributor, in the U.S. and in the world, we've got resources, and that person that you're shaking hands with has access to those resources. And I would just say, let us help you. I mean, in whatever any area of your
let's
practice.
talk to best uses of technology, market penetration. What percent of the dentists have digital radiography instead of film? Would you guess?
Oh, um, it's got to be pretty high. To be honest, I can give you a guess. I would
Yeah.
say I'm guessing at
Right.
80%, but I don't.
Yeah.
But
We
I
got
don't know for sure.
Dental Town's taking so many polls every week. We have a different poll, so we got so much data.
Yeah.
So 80% is right. What do you think would what percent of them would have a computer practice management system like Henry Schein's Dentrix?
I would say somewhere around the same, probably 80 to 90%.
Well, do you think it's more than digital radiography, or the same, or less?
Um, I I would hope it'd be more, but I
Okay,
don't.
so
I
the
don't know.
number one adopted technology would probably be high tech digital. Would be computers at 90%, digital radiography
Yeah.
for 80%. What do you think would be the next most adopted? I'm trying to this person driving to work. She's all by herself. She practices alone. I'm trying to give her a feel for what all of her homies are doing around. What do you think would be the most next adopted technology?
Intro camera.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And what percent do you think that is?
So in-row camera is an interesting one because the number of people that have them and use them
Yeah.
is a big difference, and not just use it, but use it on every patient every time. It drops dramatically.
Well, one of the
right?
reasons why is because when you fly on Southwest Airlines, every single plane is this Boeing 737. And the only secret
Right.
to lower price is lower cost. So everybody knows how to fly it, fix it, parts for it. That's why their fleet has never crashed. They're the only airline what no one's ever died on. US Air had like 8 planes fall out of the sky because they were fixing 727s, 37s, 47s, McDonnell Douglas, Airbuses. No one knew what the hell they're going on. And in those operatories, I still can't believe it. Every operatory has to be exactly the same. Like a dentist will go in there and they'll have like a little occlusal. And they'll say, well, do you want to come back or you just want to do it right now? And they'll say, great, let's do it
Oh,
right
yeah.
now. And the hygienist say, oh, well, our room doesn't have a triturator. We're like a Boeing 737, but we didn't add a bathroom in this plane. And so now I got to move you to another. It's like, move me to another room. You just added 20 minutes to the procedure. I got to, I mean, and then you walk into every room, every drawer should have exactly the same thing in every operatory. Because if I go in there and she's like, oh, yeah, it's a cavity. I wish you could do it right now. Boom, let's do it right now. I know every drawer I'm going to reach. So
what you just said. I just want to reiterate how important that is. What you just said. If you can fill that cavity right now, patient acceptance is 100%. Right? If the
Right.
patient says yes right now and I do it right now, that was a 100% acceptance. And my overhead for that day is my overhead is pretty much all fixed. Except on that one procedure, maybe I grab a glove, the supplies for that procedure. So the profit off that procedure, let's say 85, 90% of that procedure is profit. So if I can find dental work today, do it today on a patient that's already in the chair, it's virtually all profit. And patient acceptance is 100% if they do it right now. So it's clinically good, like you're saying, and it's extremely profitable.
Yeah, but you know what but then you say, okay, assistant, I'm going to stay here and do this, and do the hygienist. I'm going to stay here and do this now. Go to room 3 and do your next patient, and she'll say, but this is my room. My room. Whenever my staff says, well, this is my room, I ground them from that room for a month. I'm like, could you imagine
Right.
getting on Southwest Airlines, you're about to take off, and the pilot says, I'm sorry, I just found out this is not my airplane. My airplane is 2 gates down, so I'm going to have to ask everyone to get off and unpack all the luggage because my plane is on gate 12. I mean, it's insane. They're right there, knock it out. And when you said to me, Delta of Wyoming is going to lower their fees. What doesn't matter about that is fees are based on units and your costs are based on time. Like dentists will sit there and say, who cares the fees reduced 15%? They'll say, well, we'll do the filling on the right side this time and then you can come back and we'll do the filling on the left side. Well, you know, the oral surgeon numbs up all 4 quadrants and pulls out all 4 wisdom teeth, and he's in the same medical dental building as you. They don't want to come back. Why don't you go from 1-tooth dentistry to quadrant dentistry to full mouth dentistry? Everybody busy I ask, I'll say, hey, Kevin, you know, you got 3 cavities, they're in 3 corners. You'll be really numb, but don't you just want to come in here one time, bang it all out right now? So who cares what the price of filling is? If I got you to do all 3 in the same appointment time, 1 hour, it's cost per hour. So, and the intraoral camera, you know, back to that treatment plan acceptance, the average dentist does 1 out of 3, and the ones crushing it are doing 2 out of 3, and the third guy is never going to do it ever. But the human doesn't understand. You started this podcast when they asked, does my insurance cover that you were saying, is this necessary? Now, your iPhone has a recorder on it. So every time you go do a hygiene exam or a new patient exam, you can turn on your recorder, leave it on the counter, and walk out. And you listen to that tape. When you leave the room, the first 6 questions to the hygienist or the assistant are all based on trust. Really? Do I have a cavity? Really? I have to get a root canal? I can't just fill it? Real? I mean, so they don't ask the dentist the questions. They're asking, is this trust? And one of the best ways to prove, do you really need to do this, is not a little film x-ray, but a digital x-ray, print it out, put it on a clipboard, just like a coach would do in the NBA, and draw the play, circle it. Don't use Latin and Greek. It's not an MO or a DO. It's a flossing cavity in between your teeth. Here it is. And then the intraoral cameras are in all 8 rooms, and they're always on. And then I reach in there and take a picture. But in most dental offices, they'll say, well, I could show you this, but we need the intraoral camera. Amy, will you go get the intraoral camera? Well, we're running 5 minutes behind. And it's like, 5 minutes behind, your labor's 28%, your lab's 10, supplies 5, rent 5, advertising 3. Where the hell is intraoral cameras in your overhead? Again, these dentists, the fastest way to get to 2 out of 3 done instead of 1 out of 3 is every room is a 737. Every drawer is stocked exactly the same. If a hygienist or assistant says, no, I want my room different, then you know what? Then you cannot step foot in this room for a month. Every plane's the same. And every time there's a cavity, we're going to take a digital x-ray, print it out, circle it with red, because a doctor comes from Latin word docere, meaning to teach. And the best teachers have drawing notes on a printed out 8x10 sheet of paper digital x-ray and showing them an intraoral camera photo. Then when you leave the room, they don't turn to you and say, Kevin, do I really have a cavity? Well, of course you do. You're holding the x-ray in your hand. You're holding the intraoral camera photo in your hand, and they just got to get that. So what do you think would be the most next adopted technology after intraoral camera?
Well, if you don't mind, I want to make a comment, but just real quick, because you mentioned a couple of things I want to come back to that. You talked about your phone, and you think of how many pictures you take on your phone versus an old point and shoot camera. And really it's convenience, right? I mean, with having 3 little girls, I have, I don't know, probably 10,000 photos of my little girls just because it's so easy to take pictures and it's always there. And so when you mentioned intraoral cameras, some intraoral cameras, they take a few minutes to boot up. They take time, and so they just don't get used. Or you, like you said, bring it from one operatory to the other operatory, connecting the docking station, and 5 minutes later, you're finally taking an image. Well, it's the same reason why we don't take point and shoot camera pictures as often. It's just not as convenient. And so, to your point, having a really good intraoral camera that's right at the doctor's side, they can grab it, take a picture, in a few seconds. I mean, that's one of those, another reason why it's important to understand, what you're buying and how easy is it.
Time is money. I mean, some of these self-cure composites set up in 3 minutes, and some of them set up in 1 minute. I mean, the one that sets up in 3 minutes is 3 times more expensive than the one that sets up. But what camera do you recommend? Give brand names.
Well, that's back to the beginning. It depends. That's where we have equipment specialists and a technology specialist that sit down with that doctor to better understand, do they want to see the perio? Do they want to see? So there's cameras now that they don't replace X-rays, but can see things that cameras couldn't see before, and it depends on that doctor and that situation. I don't know that I would say there's just one camera that oversees all cameras is better than all cameras, but depending on their specialist, understand that doctor's needs, there's a variety of cameras.
What would be the next most adopted technology that the offices doing more successful utilize and adopt versus less successful?
So we've got.
And my definition of success is, again, the doctor that has a 2/3 case acceptance as opposed to a 1/3.
We've got the digital x-rays. We've got the practice management software. We've got intraoral cameras. So as far as patient acceptance, what's another?
What would just be the most common, with the next most adopted technology? Because, dentists, we do the Townie Choice Awards every year. And, so all these dentists voting on all these products, they all got 8, 10, 12 years of college. It's very different than the People's Choice Award for music or movies or whatever. I mean, these dentists are sharp. So market share information is very important. If you said, oh, well, you really need to have this technology, and I come back and say, hell, 80% of dentists have digital x-rays. Why don't you? 80% have intraoral cameras. Why don't you? But then there's some technologies where only, 10,000 dentists will use it. So then you got to start wondering, is this really right for me? Is this bleeding edge technology that's too expensive? Or is it bleeding edge, leading edge? And what are the nuances so I can figure out? Because it's red flags if only 10,000 American dentists do something. And it's a red flag that you don't do it if 80% of your homies do it. I mean, if 80% of the dentists have an intraoral camera and a digital x-ray and you don't, that's a huge sign that, dude, your homies are smart people. They're doctors. Why do 80% of the... I mean, I don't want to go to a cardiologist if I found out 80% of the cardiologists use XYZ and mine doesn't.
Right.
And I also wouldn't want to go to a cardiologist that does a bypass every 3 months. If he wasn't doing a bypass every single week, I wouldn't want him filleting me open,
Right. But you made a good point where there's emerging technologies that are picking up pace. And
which ones are those? Which ones are those?
Well, I mean, cone beam and CAD cam and digital impressioning, they're all growing in the market. And
well, when you say CAD cam, are you referring to chairside milling or digital
so both
impression?
scan only. So the scan only option, the digital impressioning, scan only, and then CAD cam or full system, chairside milling. And
is this a game changer for Henry Schein? Because Patterson just lost their exclusive with the CERAC machine. Sirona married Dentsply. Now that was probably the biggest marriage of the year last year in dentistry, and now you guys are starting to sell CERAC. Have you started already, or is it what is it, September 1st you do that?
In September, yep.
You think that'll be a game changer?
I would say our game changer is that focusing on practice care. So because we focus on practice care at Henry Schein, we've grown in every category. So in every category, we've outpaced the market with supply growth, with equipment growth, with technology growth, and one of Henry Schein's core beliefs is offering options, that we have a variety of options in every category. And in CAD CAM, having another option for our doctors fits right into our core beliefs and into providing best practice care for our doctors. And
when we talk about CAD CAM as far as chairside milling, you guys have carried the Plan Mecca E4D for a long time.
Right.
And now you are carrying the Dentsply Sirona CERAC machine. What if somebody's driving to work right now and she says, "Come on, Kevin, just tell me what's the difference? Should I go Plan Mecca E4D out of Dallas? Should I do CERAC?" What would you tell them?
I know it sounds like I'm dodging it, but it depends. It depends on if I were, you said talking to my daughter. If my daughter was a dentist today, I would have a technology rep sit down with my daughter and go through what are her goals, what is she trying to use it for, how will she use it, and it depends. It depends on how she would use it in her practice. That would determine which one would be better. But there's definitely advantages to both And
What percent of the dentists are chairside milling today with an E4D or a CEREC machine?
I don't know.
I mean, what number?
This
How
is
many total units you think are in the United States?
I mean, this isn't my area of expertise, so I'm guessing. I would guess around 20%, but that would be a guess.
20%. Okay. I think that's high. I hear 15,000 units, but what percent do you think have CBCT?
I don't know. I mean, you asked me to guess again. It'd probably be even lower than that. But those numbers are growing, and it's
Yeah.
the scan only option is growing a lot as well, or if not a lot, is growing probably faster than the
Well,
chair side.
you know what I like the most? I mean, I got the CEREC machine. I've been, I don't even want to. I don't even know how old you are. How old are you? You've been in dentistry 14 years, but how old?
39.
39. How old were you in 1987 when I bought the CEREC one?
Wow, you bought it in 1987.
What year were you born?
I would have been 9 years old.
Oh my gosh, you just ruined my day. Thanks for. I'll probably just go run out. Oh my god. So yeah, I love technology. I had the CEREC 1, I had the CEREC 2, I had the CEREC 3. I have the CBCT, I have the Care Stream. These I love that stuff. But what I love the most about chairside milling is actually not the chairside milling. What I think the lowest hanging fruit to be a better dentist is to get two people who have a cavity to get it done instead of 1 out of 3 get to 2 out of 3. I think that is imperative. As far as when you're doing your cavity, to go from naked ape, Homo sapien eyes to enhance with loops, and I'm at 3.8, you're a better dentist. When I scan those impressions, I have never scanned a prep where I wasn't humiliated and humbled and ran out of the room crying with my tail between my legs,
Right.
and always had to go back and get soft lex and smoothing burrs. I mean, you take that impression and you're like, with purple 3M Emperor gum, and why is that's dark. You're looking at it, you think it's good because it's 1-to-1 and it's dark purple, but man, you scan that thing, you see it 40 times bigger. You're like, holy moly, someone should take my license away. So it makes you just keep going back, making that prep prettier. And the labs are telling me that when you send in the vinyl polysiloxane and the polyether, they're having 6% remakes. And when you're sending in digital, they're having 1% remakes. And that's because of magnification. Same thing with my endodontist friends. The most elite endodontists, right when they're all done cleaning and shaping, right before they go to obturate, they drop down a scope like Global out of St. Louis or Zeiss out of Germany, and they're looking down at those canals about 8x, and every once in a while, maybe once a day, they're like, oh my God, there's still crud in that one canal, or I missed a canal, and the CBCT is actually now, I believe, it's rapidly going to be standard of care as opposed to a 2D, because when you're talking to ear, nose, and throats and rhinologists, there are people that thought they had sinus infections and allergies for 20 years, and then the ENT goes in and scopes them, and there's a leaking, failed maxillary first molar endo where they never got the MB2, or it's failed and it's leaking in there. Somebody did a sinus lift because they don't believe in bridges. They don't believe in filing down the tooth on each side of the extracted because that's sacred enamel to a dentist, but they have no problem exploding and blowing up the sinus with cow bone and membrane and titanium and all this crap doing a sinus lift. And these ENTs are saying these failed sinus lifts that are perfed and white Candida infection and fungus and parasites and microorganisms. So I do believe that if you have a root canal and it's going in a root canal tooth, a second bicuspid, or first or second molar, and it's near or in that sinus, if you have to ask the person, do you ever have any issues with your sinuses? And they say, well, yeah, I have allergies sometimes. Something's blooming. Well, they don't know what something's blooming is, but it's going to demand a 3D image of that root canal. And if you don't have a CBT, you should sit there, find a local endodontist. Find a local endodontist that'll do your checks for you. Just say, I don't have a CBCT, but if I have Margaret in here, she's 40 years old, she's got an upper first molar root canal, and she always has sinus ills. Will you take a 3-dimensional X-ray and see if make sure it's not my deal? Or you got to find an ENT or a rhinologist to stick a camera up there and look at it. So long-winded statement of saying, I just like magnification. Homo
Mhm.
sapien does better when they can see. You'd never want Stevie Wonder to become a dentist. You
That's
know?
a good point.
You need to keep him on
So
the piano, not with
right,
a drill
right.
in his hand.
But so even when you said, cone beam, when you're talking about cone beam, or it, depending on what procedures you're going to use it for, depending on if you're using it with CAD CAM and integrating it with that CAD CAM, depending on like I said, the procedures, one cone beam may work for you, another cone beam may work for a different doctor, but that's where I go back to, rather than saying there's a one size fits all, there's somebody that can sit down with that doctor, better understand what they're going through, what their long-term goals are, and help them choose what's best for them. And I just think it's a better option than saying here's the best one that works for everybody, because it doesn't always. Not everybody needs the top of the line, or not everybody needs it. It depends. It depends on how they're going to use it.
I can't believe we already went over an hour 6, so I gotta wrap this up quick. My homies are pulling up to work. They're probably sitting in the parking lot saying, hurry up, hurry up. But I want to
Yeah.
just make this, I want you to talk about this thing. The one thing I love about Care Credit, the number one thing I love about Care Credit is that, number one, is in the United States, if you buy something for over $1,000, it's financed 90% of the time. Cars, houses, whatever. But it's not that. It's the fact that Care Credit can come in your office and show you the utilization of all the dentists in your area. And a lot of dentists say, well, you don't understand. The problem is the economy and the factory shutdown and unemployment and blah, 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 blah. And you say, okay, you can say all that, but you're using Care Credit, $1,000 a month. And there's another guy in this medical dental building that's doing $10,000 a month, and there's a guy across the street doing $50,000 a month. So, you all have the same economy, the same city, all that. You do the Henry Schein, and just call Care Credit and have them come in and show your team that, because your receptionist might be saying, none of these people qualify. And you're like, well, why do they all qualify across the street? So it's
Right.
very good to get a balanced scorecard, okay? You do a Henry Schein practice analysis. What does it cost?
Right.
What do you do? How does my homies listening to you right now get a Henry Schein practice analysis? What does it cost? What do you do? Tell me about it.
Okay. So what we went back to is the doctors explaining what they're worried about in their practice, and through a discovery meeting. The next step typically is, now let's actually look at your numbers. The doctor said they're worried about insurance, they're worried about cancellations, worried about treatment. Well, then let's run a report and analyze the practice to look for opportunities. If insurance has made cuts in your area and you're looking for ways to optimize your practice and look for opportunities, the practice analysis breaks down the practice in hygiene, radiography, perio, in fees. It looks for opportunities for growth within the practice, and then we can come up with a treatment plan based off that doctor of what they're concerned about, what we identify in the practice analysis.
What does it cost?
And then we $249.
$249. What if they don't buy from Schein? Do they have to be a Schein customer to do it?
No, but I will say most doctors, if they go through this process, they'll want to buy from. I mean, they'll want to partner with us for the resources that we can provide. But it's a service that we'll do for any doctor, in hopes that they'll want to partner with us and work with us.
And what I'm saying is network with your value chain. Like when my rep comes in, I don't care what my rep thinks about one endo file versus another. What I want to know is, I'll say, well, what is Brad Gettleman using? I mean, I think he's the best damn endodontist in town. They'll say, well, he uses this. And then I'll say, well, what is this endodontist using? And she'll say, he's using, I want connected in my outside world. If someone's telling me to do something, what I like the most is this Henry Schein rep sees 100 offices, and some of those dentists think in fear, probably, I don't know, I think about half the dentists think in fear and scarcity and think that the dentists across the street's competition, but the other half think in hope, growth, and abundance. And your rep know who's that are, and ask her, especially if you're young, say, who's a mentor? Who do you think will meet me for lunch at Subway? Who do you think will meet me at Brad's place after work for beers to talk about this? And I just love the social network. I don't know anybody placing an implant a week who can't get the implant rep on the phone, and she shows up, and sometimes I'll ask my guy a question, and he'll say, you know what, this calls for lunch with these two guys. Let's go meet at the restaurant. Let's go there Thursday. Or he'll say, actually, I got 9 dentists, and they're all meeting at this periodontist office next Thursday. And I mean, I like learning from guys across the street, because when you travel across the country to learn how to place an implant, that guy ain't going to be there when you screw up. I mean, when I screw up, I want to be able to call my buddies and have somebody help me that's across the street. And
that analysis, we do about 6,000 a year. Well, closer to 7,000, but we do a lot of them. So it gives that sales rep an idea of, here's what's happening across the country. Here's in hygiene. Here's what
you've done 6,000 Henry Schein practice analysis a year. Do you have a bunch of data on that?
Yeah.
Well, why don't you start a post? Why don't you start a post on Dental Town under practice management that says, I know you're probably shy and you don't want to come off salesy. You just say, hey, I just did a podcast with Howard, and he wanted me to start a thread under practice management about what we've learned from doing 6,000 Henry Schein practice analysis a year and shared data. Yeah. What have you learned? I mean, again, that dentist only sees her own office. You guys are seeing 6,000 a year. You have to know something at a macroeconomic level that an individual homie in the middle of Parsons, Kansas doesn't know.
Right, and then that's our value proposition to doctors. We focus on practice care so they can focus on patient care, and these 6,000 reports help us better understand what's going on in the market.
Well, summarize those 6,000 reports. Summarize those and post those on Dental Town. So you waffled on, should I buy a Plan Mecca or a Cerac? You waffled on so many questions. So I'm going to hold your feet to the fire. Who was the better quarterback, Brett Favre or Aaron Rodgers?
Aaron Rodgers by far. Wow. Aaron Rodgers.
Wow. That is, I have to tell you, when, I admit it, I'm so horrible at predictions. When they ran off Brett Favre, I thought that was the dumbest move in the NFL. I would just stand there like, I cannot believe they would do that. And then Aaron Rodgers shows up and proved you right. I mean, who thought, and who would ever have wanted to follow Brett Favre? I mean, you'd have to be insane. That guy was a legend of Green Bay. I've lectured up in Green Bay in that stadium a couple times. There's a dental lab up there, Lord's Dental Studio, that's brought me up there a couple times. That is just a sacred ground. I mean, that's my number one vice. I mean, I never complain to anybody who's watching reality TV shows like Housewives of Miami or Housewives of Atlanta, because with Housewives of Atlanta, at least you know why Shirley's mad at Lucy. I have no idea why I went the Arizona Cardinals to crush the Green Bay Packers. I mean, I have no idea, because they're green. Yeah. I don't even know why. I don't know why. Yeah. I think reality TV is better, because at least you know why you're mad at someone. I have no idea why I went the Cardinals to cream everybody. But, man, I'll tell you what, that is the most gorgeous stadium. And I also think it's so insane that they don't put a roof over it. It's so insane it makes it cool. I mean, I've seen games there where it was a whiteout. I mean, a complete white. You don't even know what's going on. Everyone's frozen, dropping the ball, and you're like, put a roof over it. But the Green Bay people are all standing there like, nope, you're on our territory. So love that team. That's got to be one of the greatest NFL franchises of all time. And that's the Heisman, the Super Bowl trophies. Vince Lombardi, straight out of Green Bay. So hey, big shout out to your boss. I think your boss Stan Bergman is seriously one of the greatest men in dentistry. I cannot tell you. A couple of times I've been out in the middle of nowhere in the jungle and doing some missionary dentistry thing. And you fly into an airport, you drive a 4-wheel drive for 3 hours, you carrying all your supplies. And then there out in the middle of frickin' nowhere is the brand new dental office with state-of-the-art equipment and all this stuff. And I'm like, who built that? And there's a little plaque, built by Henry Schein. And so I told him, this is the coolest YouTube video. You got to find it. So I told these kids in Tanzania, I said, I know my friend Stan Bergman, he built this. So here's my iPhone. I'm going to film a video. I want everybody to tell Stan, thank you, Stan, for building this dental clinic. And I said, okay, go. And they started singing happy birthday. Happy birthday. Because, they don't know. Hell, I'm speaking English. They don't know what the hell I'm talking about. But so they all sang Stan Bergman happy birthday from Tanzania. But you guys, Stan does more charity behind the scenes, off the record, that no one knows about. He's born in South Africa. He is an amazing man. I mean, just talk about the American dream. Talk about the poster child of why you want immigrants to come to the United States. I mean, he is just, God dang, he's one of the most important figures living today in dentistry. So tell Stan happy birthday on behalf of the orphans in Tanzania. And on that note, I hope you have a rockin' hot day, Kevin.
I will. Thank you. You as well.